let's start off at the beginning. How'd you first get into music, man?
Yeah, it's a good question. My dad was always, when I was a kid, my dad was always playing records, 60s, 70s stuff, Santana, Hendrix, The Doors. And he used to always be sitting around the house just playing guitar while we were watching TV. So I think yeah, that kind of exposure made me go, yeah, I'd like to learn guitar one day. That was probably it. And then when I was 16, 17, I started writing music reviews and getting in with like the music community online, which is great. And then a little while later, I ended up joining like I guess a grindcore band, where those guys really taught me a lot about music and got basically my first real band aside from directionless jamming in high school. So yeah.
And what was the name of this band? Was it were you part of Eboli or was it Serious Speak?
Yeah, it was Ebola, which Serious Beat kind of came from Ebola. We had a vocalist. We were very much in that kind of grindcore scene. We got to support bands like Napalm Death and Suffocation and stuff like that here in Sydney. Uh, but yeah, we were working on this album for a long time. That was kind of like more progressive, more weird time signatures. Still very heavy and brutal. But um, the vocalist couldn't quite we waited for a number of years for him to finish his parts, and it didn't really happen. So we decided to kind of move on as an instrumental band, and I moved from bass to second guitar. And yeah, Serious Speak was born from that.
Yeah, I was curious because the Ebola stuff it never lists anywhere the actual band members, like y'all had pseudonyms.
Yeah.
So I was like, was he a member or was he not? I wasn't sure. Right.
I never played.
I had found the Tim link, right? So there was a website that linked it directly to Tim, but not to you. So I wasn't sure.
Yeah, well, I didn't play on anything they released, unfortunately. Like, I think there's a split record which might have my name on it as the bassist, but I didn't play bass on it. So yeah, I guess I kind of more properly came into the band with Serious Beak. Yeah.
Word. Tell me a bit about Serious Speak. Like that first release, which I am scared to even try to pronounce. Uh, who swore?
Yeah, it's like a indigenous word from British Columbia, maybe. Anyway, it's hukuk, which he's never gonna get. Um, yeah, I guess it's a band that kind of we were inspired mainly by like Meshuggah and Botch, like all these kind of weird rhythms. We liked the fact that both those bands could be like quite groovy while playing in weird time signatures. Um, I think also like a little bit of like King Crimson 70s prog, though, we tried to bury that a little bit. It was a great band. It was a period of my life where, most of the other guys in the band were a little bit older than me, and we'd just go around to the drummer's house every Saturday, jam for 2, 3 hours, have a barbecue, a few drinks, go jam for the 2, 3 hours. And yeah, it's just a labor of love writing these like freaking weird, intricate songs and hanging out. It's great. Good time.
Yeah, they were awesome. They were awesome. It's like you can really hear the King Crimson influence on some of the parts on
Mm,
that second, not the
yeah.
remix album, but that second album. Uh, I mean, I could spot some King Crimson,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, nicely spotted.
Yeah, but those were some great releases. You were also in a band around the same time called Adrift for Days. Tell me about this
Yeah,
band.
yeah. So this is a band that I started. I was really enjoying playing Serious Beat, but I was getting more and more into Doom, like post metal and this type of thing. I really like drone as well. So I wanted to start something heavy and slow and like kind of mixing different genres. So um yeah, I just started like kind of asking around, and I think just this it's back in the days where people used message boards and things like that. And I ran into this vocalist who seemed to have like a pretty great range. Like I didn't want someone who would just scream. I wanted somebody who could, do a lot of things. And he was really interested in using vocal effects, using different techniques, like looping, like all every time he would come to a jam or record a song, he'd be trying to do something different, and I really kind of respected that. Um, One of my school friends was the drummer, Steve. Had a great bassist, Matt Williams, who I kind of he's a bit older. I knew him from there's quite a strong underground music scene around Sydney at the time, and we got lucky with another ad for our lead guitarist Ron Prince. So yeah, we just explored different heavy, slow genres, sludge, psychedelia, post rock, post metal, doom. Um, it was a hell of a lot of fun. Like I think for us, like the real peak came when we were able to support Neurosis here in Sydney, which is like probably one of my biggest influences in starting that band. Yeah,
That's phenomenal. I love Neurosis. Yeah,
great.
and you guys were a band for quite some time. Let's see, 7 years straight of releases. From
Yeah.
the Lunar Mariah all the way to a Sleepless Grave, which I think the Sleepless Grave was my favorite release from that band.
Oh, that's good to know, man. Yeah, it's funny that last album. I think like my tastes changed a lot over time, and I kind of get restless, and I'm starting to bring in other ideas and elements, and I know things were kind of starting to fall apart a little bit. So it was a big effort to kind of for everyone to kind of get that record done. I'm glad you like it though. That's cool. Good to hear.
Yeah. It said everywhere that there was a Black a Leaf album that was going to come out in early 2023, but I
Yeah.
was unable to find said release.
So yeah, I guess that's kind of my newest band. We that release will come out towards the end of this year. So we're literally just signing off the final mixes now. It's been a weird one in that it started off as like a duo that was really improvised, like I guess droney, some odd time signatures. So I play guitar with 2 amps, and then the percussionist plays like a duff drum from like Iran, it's like a circular hand drum kind of thing. So it took us a long while to kind of settle and write some songs, and then we added a cellist into the mix. And I guess the recording took place over a number of years. We recently had a vocalist record some stuff for us. So yeah, it's been a real evolving process, but that'll come out probably in November this year. And with some luck, yeah, we'll tour it and try and go over to Europe and see what happens, see how people like it.
Awesome, awesome. Well, the only thing I heard was just you guys' improvisation with the guitar and the drum. It'd be interesting to hear some cello into that mix. Um, and then let's get into Hashashin. Hash Hashashin? Is that you gotta access that extra SHSH?
Yeah, Hashash, and I think you said it perfectly, man. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a band. I guess as Adrift for Days was kind of winding down, I was like getting more and more interested into like Middle Eastern music. And if you look at like Hashashin's 3 albums, um, that's me slowly, I guess, engaging more and more with that. Like these days, I'm playing a lot of Afghan instruments. You can see one in the corner here, and there's actually one here in the bed. Um, so yeah, it started off me playing bouzouki, but running like Irish bouzouki, but running that through effects and distortion and stuff. Yeah, a lot of odd rhythms, like psychedelic kind of riffs and stuff. Our drummer is really good at Evan McGregor. He's really good at polyrhythmic, polymetric kind of stuff. Like he's got beautiful feel in his playing, but he can play like really strange rhythms really smoothly. So you just feel like they're flowing in a really natural way. Um, I guess on our second record, I got bored with just playing the bouzouki, and so I'm playing heaps of different stuff. I played like an Iranian instrument, the sitar, Tajik instrument from Tajikistan, which looks a bit similar to this, another sitar, but very different. 12-string guitar, 6-string guitar, and I recorded on the Afghan rebub as well. So it's just kind of like searching for new sounds and new ideas. And
For
then
that Badakashan album.
Badakhshan, yeah, that's right. So I went to that region. It's kind of inspired by I had about a month in the Pamir Mountains in Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. And as you come down the mountains into Tajikistan, you get to the southern border, which borders Afghanistan. So I was in parts where it's literally like you could kind of almost run and jump over this little trickle of a river, and you're in Afghanistan. It's pretty cool. But that whole region has like it's not quite a Sufi music tradition, but it feels and sounds quite similar. It's like different tradition stuff. So yeah, I guess it was kind of inspired by the landscapes, and I picked up a few instruments there. I wrote the track Death in Lengar when I was in Lengar in Tajikistan. So yeah, it started really inspiring me. I think the landscape and the culture and the music there. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that it was that second album was a lot less heavy than the first album. The first album was a lot more almost
Yeah.
almost Secret Chiefsy, like with
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
crunchiness that was added to that feel. But you started really experimenting way more with it on that second album. There's a lot more of a textural sounds across it. And then the blessed sequence of that single from
Oh, yeah.
2021, that was a pretty good track as well.
Yeah, we it's meant to be on Badakhshan, but as we like put all these songs together and recorded them, it's like this doesn't really fit. It's too yeah, it's too amplified. It's not organic. It just didn't quite work. I mean, we were experimenting so much with different ways of writing songs. Like the drummer wrote, the rhythm of uh I swear I can remember my song names. There's a track with the super hypnotic rhythm that he had written, and we kind of wrote around him. Other ones, I'd written. Others were kind of born from kind of improvisations. So we were just trying to like, I guess we were all not really interested in doing the same thing again. Um, and it was painful, but we pushed ourselves to try and work out new sounds. So it was Shrines of the Wakan was the one that started with his kind of rhythm. And then yeah, we're seeing like we really love there's a local band here called Instrumental Adjective who
I love that band. You're to the two EPs that have been released are fucking amazing.
part of my job as a record label owner is to just harass those guys to record more like every couple of days.
I really
Um,
wish they would. I really wish they would because
yeah,
that those two there's only six songs. There's only six
there's only
songs. That's
six
not
songs.
enough.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, they're good friends of mine, but we're really inspired by what they do. And so we were trying to start exploring that a little bit with Bless Sequence, but kind of decided it wasn't where we wanted to go. And then we came to that new album, I guess EP, Saranam, which is based in the Afghan Rebub. It's a bit more kind of semi-acoustic, I guess. And it would have been longer, but our bassist ended up moving to Canada. So after COVID, so we're like, oh crap, okay, let's record what we've got. We don't want to work with another bassist. Let's just get this together and get it out and capture this in time. But I would have loved to have had a few more tracks on there and kind of have something
Are
a
are
bit
are
longer.
you saying that there's possibly no more Hashashin?
We're gonna see. Like, our bassist Cam's now back in the country, but now I've actually moved from Sydney to Melbourne. He's living down the south coast of New South Wales, and I think, yeah, I think we just need a break. I think we need a little break. We're not in the same place anymore. Um, yeah, we used to jam like every week, so it's not saying there's no more, but we're definitely taking a hiatus for probably, at least this year, and we'll just see what happens. I'd love to play with those guys again. I mean, Cam and Evan are both just incredible musicians. Um, Evan was a guy who, as a drummer, I think probably like in my early 20s, actually even late teens, I think I saw him playing just at Gene's place, who's the Serious Big drummer. He just jumped on the kit and started playing something. And I was just like, oh my God, like, who is this guy? What is this style? It was kind of like, if you know, like John Theodore from the Mars Volta, like super groovy, lots of ghost notes, like complex, but not, it's not showy. Like, I just thought he just blew my mind. I didn't know drums could sound like that. And so working with him has been like a absolute highlight. And I'd really love to make more music with them. Just got to find the right time, I think. They both got kids and I do not. So they're pretty short on time.
Word. You could always pull a High Castle Tele Orchestra and just do it all remote.
Yeah, yeah. It's a totally different thing though. Like I've never really done a lot of writing. Like I write parts by myself, but I don't write the drums. I don't write the bass. I don't, those guys are so good at that. They're like, and I think their level of music theory is kind of pretty far beyond mine as well. But something like that could work. But it's something I just love playing live. Like I think that's doing releases where I don't play live doesn't really feel right to me. And there's some exceptions, but yeah, I want to be able to do it live.
Word. So, how did you come about starting your own record label, which you're running two of now, by the way?
Yeah, yeah. Who needs sleep, huh? Um, yeah. So, Artist Catharsis, I guess, is the one that started first. I was helping a mate out with his record label, like when I was kind of 16, 17, 18. Like I was pretty good on computers and stuff. So I set up his web store and, I was doing a bunch of stuff with him, doing digital marketing and doing some press stuff for him. And that was really great. But after a while, I was like, yeah, this music isn't quite my vibe. So it could be interesting to do something where, I was seeing going to all these local shows and just being blown away by the talent that's here in Sydney that no one knows about. Like I would go and see there's this band Squat Club who there's this band Squat Club who are really influential for me, like mixing all these different styles, like kind of in the instrumental adjective thing, like very technical, but like had a lot of these big dynamic build-ups and it was super interesting. And their shows are getting like 30 people to them. And I was like, I don't understand how this band, who's one of the most inspiring things I've heard musically, is tiny, and then all these other acts which are a bit more like safe and like not doing anything that interesting are huge, like internationally. I was like, I don't get it. So I wanted to do something to like help share the music I was seeing around me with the world. And when Bandcamp started, I was really preoccupied by, I looked at, joining a major record label. Like I had an interview early on when I was younger, like with Universal and Sony BMG, and I was like, do I want to go down this path? I was like, no, I don't. It's too corporate. It's not the right vibe. And then when Bandcamp started, I was like, well, this is cool. This is a platform that lets you, it doesn't like take huge amounts of money from you like Apple Music was doing. You can set the price, you can make it free. Like there was a lot that was going for it that I thought was really positive. And that's basically why I started putting out releases. I was like, well, this is easy. I kind of agree with it ethically. And it seems like a good way to like start sharing cool Australian music.
Yeah, but now you're so much further than just Australian music.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to get back there a little bit. Like we were doing a lot of stuff with Small Pond Recordings. I really like those guys. They're in the UK in Brighton. They did. I think they did Physic House Band early on. They've got like Alarmist. They've got Town Portal. So they've got all these like bands very much in the styles that I like. But yeah, and I was enjoying co-releasing with them. But I think I go through all these phases of rethinking what the label focuses on. Like really early on, we were doing a lot of heavy music, extreme music, doom. And then I was slowly falling out of those scenes a little bit. I started doing more like jazzy stuff and post rock and now, ambient stuff. Um, but yeah, I think I'm gonna bring it back to like just trying to, as much as possible, represent like really cool Australian underground artists. I think it's kind of something unique that we do. Yeah.
And I've discovered a lot of awesome Australian artists because of your label as
Oh,
well,
thanks, man.
Uh
Very kind of you to say.
yeah, I dug the last time I did an interview with you, I dug through that. I mean, you've done a lot of releases, and I tried to listen to a lot of them. There's just so many. It was hard. It was a little overwhelming
There's a
at
lot.
first, but
Yeah.
it great. There's a lot of great stuff in there. There's a lot of great stuff in there. Like Arcing Wires, that band's
Oh
freaking
man, they're great.
awesome. Like it's like
I wish they did a follow up.
jazz gent. That's great stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, and done really well, I think. Like done pretty tastefully, which is hard. I think it's hard to do that in a way that doesn't sound really corny. I would have loved them to do a second album, but their sax player moved to the US
to go to
to
college, yeah.
study, go to scholarship. Yeah, yeah,
Which I don't know why you would do that. It's just the schools around here are so
yeah.
expensive.
I think he got a scholarship, so that'll be why.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I
awesome
did.
band, man. And I started hanging out more in the jazz scene for a while, and you see these like absolute incredible musicians. A lot of them are just playing like jazz standards though, and that's kind of boring after a while. So I wanted to be like, I'm the guy you come to when you have some kind of weird side project you want to release. So, yeah, any Australian jazz guys out there who have some kind of twisted thing they want to do, they end up coming to me these days. So that's cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's an awesome niche to have. It's an awesome niche to have. Uh, so let's get into your solo project. You've been releasing a lot of solo stuff lately, starting with Death Envelops Me in 2020 and Eclipse in 2021 that split with the Orbs. What
Oh
was it?
yeah, yeah. It's confusing albums is kind of my thing, clearly. Eclipsing Orbs. So my side was Orbs, and the eclipsing side was this guitarist up in Brisbane who actually helps out a lot with the label, Joseph Rabjohns, who's I think he's fucking unreal as a guitarist, and we've kind of been doing a few little collabs. You might have seen like little singles coming out here and there. Um, yeah, I mean, the first track, Death Envelops All, I was just kind of like, can I do something by myself? Would that be interesting? I used to, at the end of every year, I'd hire out, I'd get a really nice rate on a studio. The guy would go away and he kind of knew me pretty well. So I'd get a cheap rate for a studio for a couple of weeks and just set up all my amps and, mics and stuff and mess around as, it's really good fun. And I decided to try and record something. And I was pretty, I think, haphazard, but yeah, Death Envelops All kind of came out of that slowly, like trying to do this hypnotic, heavy drone kind of thing. Um, and yeah, then I guess with Orbs, like you can see there's a few directions there. It's not, I don't think it's that coherent, but there's this kind of like droney earth kind of vibe. But I was kind of getting influenced by Indian classical music, like Indian classical music is semi-improvised, so there are like themes or whatever that they'll play regularly, and they can transform. But then there's like kind of free improvisational parts as well. I was like, can I do this with Doom? Can I do this with Drone? Um, so yeah, there's a couple of ideas there, but most of it's just improvised, I would say. Um, then there's some other tracks which are more like, I don't know, like prettier, like almost like a neoclassical thing with like a cellist. Yeah, and there are a couple which are just kind of these loops I pulled out on my pedal board that I thought were kind of cool, were pretty. Um, so yeah, like just exploring stuff. It was kind of COVID times as well, so just yeah, really trying to push myself on guitar and develop some new ideas, I guess.
Speaking of new ideas, here in April you have a album that you're about to drop called Shrines. Tell us about that.
Yeah, actually another lockdown project. Like in 2020, I don't know how it was like in the US, like whether you guys had lots of lockdowns. I think it maybe depends which city or state you're in. Um,
I'm right in the middle, so after about a month and a half, people stopped caring.
yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean Australia was more conservative, like more risk adverse, I guess. So we had like I think it was probably 2 months of like basically don't leave the house unless you need groceries or you can go for a walk nearby. That's it. Don't see anyone. Um, and that first one was like, oh, this is fucking cool. Like I can just like play guitar all day and I don't have to go to the office. I don't have to see anyone. This is pretty good. And I started this project where I was like, well, I think a lot of musicians now don't have income. You know, they can't, most of them can't teach, you know, online or they can't do session gigs or they can't play concerts. So I was like, well, maybe one thing I could do is just like reach out to all these musicians I know and like send them things I've been working on and kind of collaborate with them a little bit. Um, and to be honest, like I just started recording more and more random stuff. I just spent hours every week like exploring weird loops and stuff and seeing how I can push my guitar amp to do some pretty weird things. Um, yeah, and it took me kind of 2, 3 years to finish and finally, you know, get enough collaborations and you know get things in order to release it. But yeah, this is the thing, shrines. I mean, I've been getting more and more into ambient music as well. So it kind of touches on that, I think. Like maybe like a lot of my music, it's kind of hypnotic, it's kind of drony. But yeah, I mean, I think it's fun. I think it's different. Yeah. Have you got a copy of that, by the way? I can send you a
Oh no,
copy if
you
you haven't
haven't
got
sent me
one.
yet one yet. I only had
Oh,
the one
cool.
track so far.
Oh, cool, man. I'll send it to you after this.
Oh, awesome, awesome.
دل معتاب جوری نداره یار گلکم ز جانان طاقت دوری نداره
Yeah. Now see, we skipped over Worlds Within Worlds. How did this
Yeah.
label come about?
Yeah, so my other label, Artist Catharsis, I feel like over time I just like I seem to alienate more and more people with the record label and my music. You know, like the first Hashashin record, yeah, kind of riffy, fun stuff, and the last one's like, oh, this is kind of serious. Like, what's going on here? And it's not metal, so I think our fans are probably a bit confused. And it's kind of the same with the record label. Like, it started heavy, it started drifting into jazz, and it's kind of like a big mix of things. I think these days. So at a certain point, I was like really getting into like music from the East, like from Iran, Afghanistan, Turkey to an extent, definitely India and Pakistan, like more traditional kind of music. Which incidentally, like a lot of it is like super drony and like hypnotic as well, which is what I like. And so at some point, I was just like, you know what, I want to work with like international artists like in this space. And I don't think I can keep expanding artist catharsis to fit this stuff in here. So I'm going to start a dedicated label to exploring that stuff. So, you know, we work with artists like Kai Sassar, who's like Afghan American rhubarb player, um, Badier, which is like an Iranian Afghan trio. What else have we got coming up? Yeah, Niloy Asan, who's like a great Indian classical vocalist that's coming up, and um, yeah, it's been awesome. Like I still feel like I'm learning this space a little bit, and I'm trying to bring more artists to Australia to tour. Like we've got a Kais is going to play at the Sydney Opera House, which is pretty cool. So I'm trying to do more kind of touring stuff with them as well, but yeah, it's another vehicle for me to keep exploring new music and styles and things that I'm passionate about and hopefully like help some artists who otherwise would just have to be trying to promote their stuff on their own. You know, I like trying to give a helping hand if I can and yeah, help share music that I think is worth listening to.
با کاروبم رسم خارز برنامه کشم
Speaking of helping out artists, tell me about your possible campaign.
Yeah, so I've got a good friend, Michel Gasco, who lives over in Spain, and we kind of met. I only just started the label, and I think he reached out to me originally and was kind of like, "Hey, I think we should chat. Like, I think we have interests in common." I was like, "Okay, sure." And when I did meet him, like just online, I immediately really liked him. And this is a guy who had before the war in Syria, he'd spent a couple of years in Syria studying oud. And then obviously, he could no longer go to Syria during the war. So then he was going to Turkey and still visiting those communities. And then he started heading to Iran. He was going to the eastern border in this town called Mashhad, which is a very important, like historic town on the border with Afghanistan. And these days has a lot of Afghans from Herat, which is Afghanistan's west border. Incredibly important artistic and cultural city. A lot of them, when the Taliban came back and cracked down on musicians and music and doing terrible things to musicians, they've left and gone to Mashhad. So for 10 years, he's been um, going there and meeting with musicians and learning from them. And after a while, we realized there was this, he has the access to these incredible people. And given the moment, which was the Taliban takeover, it was like we should do something. We should at least the very least we could do is raise some money to go over there, record these musicians, get some nice videos, and kind of put this out into the world. And as part of like raising the issue of what's happening to music in Afghanistan. So yeah, it was a really good project. People were incredibly generous. We got a lot of support for it. I had to chip in some cash in the end, but people were really supportive. And I think it's one of our best releases in that, we got a lot of media coverage from it. Like Songlines magazine, which is probably the big world music publication in the West, did like a 4-page feature. Like Bandcamp did like a dedicated article. It's really, really positive and really cool. And Michel's he goes to Iran like at least a couple of times a year. So he was there late last year, and he went and met all the musicians again, and paid them money from our sales, which felt really good because economic situation in Iran right now is really rough. And if you're an Afghan, refugee without permits, it's even rougher. So it's awesome to feel like not only are we sharing some cool music people don't know about, but actually helping people. It's yeah, it's really nice.